What's going on, everybody? It's your buddy, it's your pal, Fast Me. It's the YWC Reality Check here with something a little bit different. Did this before WrestleMania, going to do it again here. It's the worst case scenarios for SummerSlam 2024. Now, hyperbole in the title? Absolutely. Nothing I'm going to talk about today is a worst case scenario. Oh my god, it's going to kill the company. Oh my god, SummerSlam sucked. WWE's going in the shitter. Full credit to them. They've got themselves in a position right now where I don't think they can physically do that. I think they would actually have to try hard for me to come out with a thing like that. Worst case scenario for WWE right now is, that wasn't quite as great as I thought it was going to be. So these are the things where I would definitely come out of the pay-per-view thinking, that's not as great as I thought it could be. And even then, it's one of those, okay, we'll move on to the next awesome thing. So, 6 points. We're going to go through them relatively quickly. Shouldn't be that long a pod, even though, famous last words on a podcast coming from myself. Don't have Jake here with me to keep me on track, so who knows where I'm going to ramble to. But here we go. The first one is no tag team titles on the show. And I'm starting with this one because it looks like we're definitely getting that. We have the women's tag team titles are being defended on the Go Home show on SmackDown. The SmackDown WWE Tag Team Championships are also being defended on SmackDown. We've got the Unholy Union versus Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair, and we've got DIY defending against the Bloodline. I think we both know where both of those titles are going. One of them is kind of awesome, one of them is really not. That's not what we're here to talk about right now. But here's the thing, and here's why I say this. I wouldn't point out the tag team thing if it wasn't for a compliment that I have for WWE going into this card. And when I sit down later on, hopefully with our good buddy Jake DeMarco, go send him some love on Twitter at Countdown Ended. But either way, with myself or with Jake, I'm going to talk about this in a bit more detail. One of the things that I like about this card is the fact that we're pulling back from Triple H's pullback. Now, coming out of the Vince era, Vince got fucked out of his company, Triple H took over, made it better. It's fine. One of the things was, and I've said it before, and I will say it again as long as it's still a thing, Triple H took the criticism that pay-per-views were too long way too far. 5 matches on a card is not a pay-per-view. He's putting out good shows, don't get me wrong. The international stuff is great, the crossover with other companies is great, the matches that we do get, the stories that we do get are great, but 5 matches is not a pay-per-view. 5 matches was a takeover back in that era of NXT, but WWE main roster has to do pay-per-views that support 2 shows, etc., etc., etc. So it looks like we're going a little bit away from that. We got 7 matches so far. Obviously, we've got the exhibition match with CM Punk and Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre, which will be another conversation for another day. But if I look at the card, it's the first time in a long time we've had both men's titles, both women's titles, and both mid-card championships all being defended on the show, which only underlines, because it is a great thing, but it only underlines the mindset that people have always had about WWE, that WWE doesn't give shit about tag team wrestling. If you've got all your titles on the card except for all 3 of your tag team, I don't know what the Judgment Day is doing with their tag titles. Are they defending them on Raw? I don't remember off the top of my head, but the SmackDown ones and the women's ones are both being defended the night before. It really does underline the fact, or it really does give credence to the naysayers out there that WWE doesn't give a shit about tag team wrestling, which is super unfortunate. Is it a worst case scenario in the fact that it's going to make the show look bad? Not necessarily. It's a worst case scenario in the sense of all the people that like to blather against WWE's current success. You're giving them a little bit to go on, and that's not exactly great. I hope they do something. I said do with the Raw titles on SummerSlam as well. Even throw them on the kickoff. NXT has proven that you can throw a match on the kickoff and it doesn't hurt anybody's feelings. I was there for Heatwave, just saying. So yeah, no tag team titles on the show. Put that one on there first because it already seems to be confirmed that there's no tag team titles on the show. And as I said, is it surprising particularly? No, but that's part of the problem. Anyways, second worst case scenario we go into in this pay-per-view is that nothing happens. No headlines come out. No big new steps are taken, no comebacks, returns, no debuts, no title changes, and it's just a show. Now, again, I go back to the previous pay-per-view record of WWE in the Triple H era so far. There's a lot of shows that they've done where they've been spectacular. They've been in huge arenas, in front of huge audiences, in front of full arenas and full stadiums in venues all over the world, and the spectacle of it carries it. I was at Money in the Bank. I'm going to stop saying that soon. The spectacle carries it. Being in like 19,000 people at the Scotiabank Arena for Money in the Bank, it's a big thing, and Money in the Bank did some stuff, so I'm shooting on my own example here. But there are other ones where it's like, okay, nothing really changed. You know, the bad guy that's been doing heelish bullshit stuff did some more heelish bullshit stuff, and it's a lackluster, newsworthy type of show, but it was good, it was fun of like a bajillion people, and we did it in this place that we've never been before, whatever. You're back on home soil as far as being back in the US, and it's a Big Four pay-per-view. If you walk away from it thinking, oh, that match went pretty much how I thought it was going to go, that match went pretty much how I thought it was going to go, that title stayed where it is, that title stayed where it is, those characters still, they did pretty much what I thought they were going to do. If it's just watch it while it's on and you can throw it in the bin as soon as it's over, that's a huge failing on their part. Only because they've set the standard. WrestleMania was great, Rumble was great. Go back to the Rumble and the inclusion of Jordynne Grace, which then led into all the NXT stuff they're doing in NXT right now. Look at WrestleMania in every conceivable thing they did. Some of them were silly, some of them were not for everybody, but WrestleMania was big, felt big, did huge things, did Cody Rhodes' story, all that kind of thing. If you don't come out of this with any headlines, a title change, a heel turn, a face turn, a betrayal, a debut, a return, something, a screw job, you know what I mean? So the second worst case scenario, and I guess this could go for any pay-per-view, but specifically because it's SummerSlam, specifically because they are now gearing up to make you think SummerSlam is as big as WrestleMania with the 2-night thing coming in 2 years, walking away from this show without any headlines would be a huge worst case scenario. Now, getting into the individual matches, we've got Nia Jax versus Bayley for the WWE Women's Championship, with Tiffany Stratton sort of on the periphery with her Money in the Bank briefcase. Michin has kind of been on the periphery. A, because she's kind of had Bayley's back, and B, because Bayley's sort of upgraded as far as who her sometimes tag team partner is. I'm sorry, I take Bayley and Michin as a tag team a whole lot more seriously than I take Bayley and Naomi. Go ahead and say whatever you're going to say about me for that, but it is true. Now, what is the worst case scenario here? Do I want to predict a result here? No, I don't. Do I want to predict a definite winner here? No, I don't. Because there's lots of moving parts and there's lots of things you can do and all that kind of thing. Nia Jax is on this return. Bayley is a constant, steady, awesome presence in WWE. And Tiffany Stratton is the new one with the rocket strapped to her ass, very, very clearly, straight out of NXT. She's over in front of everybody. She's over all over the world, which is a huge thing. She's the only one in the Money in the Bank ladder match that I can think of that got cheered louder, both at the press conference and in the match, than the hometown girl, Chelsea Green. So they got to pay attention to that. So she's the one you're trying to lift up. Nia Jax is the one that's come back and is controversial and does Healy stuff, and we know what people think of Nia Jax. And Bayley's Bayley. Bayley deserves the fucking world. She's one of the very few, along with Asuka and a couple of other people, that kept us sane during the pandemic. So there's a really cool dynamic here, right? I don't want to say who wins, and I don't want to say who leaves the building with the championship. I do say the only losing take here is Nia Jax Nia Jax leaves the building with the belt. That's not to say that she can't win. That's not to say that she has to be swamped, or the fact that, she has to be screwed over or whatever. But you have to go one of two ways here. Either Bayley, who has not gotten nearly as much as she deserves in the past little while, needs to get something. Nia Jax, I'm sorry, take this in the way that I mean it, Nia Jax is the big show of the women's division. If you've got a champion that's looking a little lackluster, you put them up against the big show, and then you say, oh my god, look what they overcame, look what they accomplished, etc. You use that to put a little bit more steam behind Bayley, because it's just lacking. It is. People very unreasonably, from the time that she came back with Damage Control at that SummerSlam, brought in Io Sky, brought back Dakota Kai, started the whole Damage Control story. People were shitting on her from the off, which is terrible because, like, why? But also, it was pretty cool. And while WWE was, like, defining what faction wrestling actually is, sorry, AEW, they were the only ones doing it in the women's division, and it was really cool. She wasn't putting herself right front and center. She got Io Sky to the Money in the Bank briefcase. She got the other, who was it? Was the combination Dakota Kai and Io Sky? They were the tag team champions at one point. And then, yeah, eventually the turn happened and all that kind of thing. What she was doing was very much building a group around her of people that she was trying to build, if that makes sense. And then eventually it came back around that, yes, her group turned on her, she lashed back out at them, she got her championship, etc. But the whole time, she's really come under a lot of scrutiny, and it's been kind of treated as the B championship because stuff that was happening on Raw was more to some people's tastes, myself included, at some points. So you gotta do something for her that reminds you who Bayley is, right? That's where I'm coming from with that. So you gotta really give Bayley her flowers on the big stage, or you have to go with Tiffany Stratton. Now, how do you go with Tiffany Stratton? Does Nia Jax win and then she turns on Nia Jax? Doesn't necessarily work because, you know, she's an amazing wrestler, but she's playing the cowardly heel. She's playing the one that doesn't really want to piss off Nia Jax, recognizes Nia Jax as a threat, whatever. Do you have her help Nia Jax, fuck her at the last minute, Bayley wins, then she cashes in on Bayley, makes Nia Jax kind of look like an idiot? Does she wait until Nia Jax beats the crap out of Bayley after the match because she's pissed off that she's lost? Absolutely. Maybe that's a thing. You know, Bayley wins, Nia Jax flattens her. Commentary can be like, oh, she won the battle, but she lost the war, da-da-da-da-da. Out comes Tiffany Stratton. Even then, that doesn't really make sense because you got to figure she's been telling Nia Jax all along that she's not going to cash in and all that kind of thing. But why it doesn't work, and why what you really don't want to do to make Nia Jax look like an idiot is if Nia Jax walks out as champion, she still has this existing sort of partnership with Tiffany Stratton. The minute we leave SummerSlam, she's the champion and still thinks Tiffany Stratton is in her corner or has any of her best interests at heart. You've got Nia Jax looking like an idiot, and you've sacrificed the title reign of Bayley coming off of the Damage Control story that I thought was great to make Nia Jax look like an idiot. So what you either have to do is you have to give flowers to the one that was there all along, or you have to commit to the rocket that you're strapping to Tiffany Stratton. And the lazy, mushy, lukewarm middle of that is Nia Jax kills Bayley and leaves, because that's got a short shelf life, does it not? Because then you got to think, okay, maybe Tiffany Stratton's cashing in on Monday Night Raw, but who's she cashing in on Monday Night Raw? Is probably going to be Rhea Ripley. Is Rhea Ripley going to kill her? Yes, potentially. All that kind of thing. So, I'm not saying that Nia Jax can't win. I'm not saying Bayley has to lose. I'm not saying Tiffany Stratton has to cash in necessarily. I do think you go with Bayley, you go with Tiffany. Nia Jax is the weird sort of like compromised middle that doesn't work no matter how you look at it. That's just me. Tell me what you think down in the box below. Now, one that I will say is I'm definitely saying, like, I'm going to pick the winner, and if it goes the other way, I think they're wrong. If Braun Breaker fails again to win the Intercontinental Championship against Sami Zayn, it's terrible. It's terrible because he looks like a guy that's got all this hype behind him but doesn't deliver at the end of the day. And in a very, very different way, that's the brush that everybody used to tar characters like Bray Wyatt with. Now, all due respect to Bray Wyatt, you guys know what I mean when I say that, but Bray Wyatt used to come in, he used to have the amazing promos, the amazing presentation, and all that, and then he'd lose. Braun Breaker isn't a supernatural character by any stretch of the imagination, but he comes in, he's got all this presentation, they're doing all these video packages on how destructive he is, and how fast he runs, and how hard he hits the ropes, and he's killing everybody until there's a title on the line. It makes him look like a hype product rather than what we know he can be if we've been watching him from NXT. Now, the funny thing about all of this is you've got one of two ways to go with this. Either Sami Zayn loses and goes upwards towards the title, which is going to involve Gunther, where you can play on the fact that Sami Zayn beat Gunther for the last title he had. Maybe he'll beat Gunther for the next title he has. Also, on the other side of the coin, Braun Breaker right now has an ongoing thing going on with Ilya Dragunov. Ilya Dragunov has a match that has been fantasy booked in everybody's mind, even though it's never been announced on WWE forums. It's never come from a WWE mouth. Everybody thinks we're getting Gunther versus Ilya Dragunov at the Bash in Berlin, which would be a lot of fun, by the way. The match that they had during COVID in the BT Sport Studio thing with no crowd, with nothing, in the empty building, and it was absolutely gross. Definitely want to see that again. Definitely want to see that in a huge stadium in front of a lot of people. So, Braun Breaker could go on and, squash, Ilya Dragunov for a little bit, and then Gunther, if he's the champion by that point, can come out and mock Ilya Dragunov in the back. They bump into each other in the back and all that kind of thing. It's like, I remember you. Looks like you're having a bit of a hard time. And it's like, how about I come to Berlin and give you a hard time? I shouldn't do accents, I'm sorry. But, so, Sami Zayn could lose upwards, go after Gunther, who he knows he can beat for a different title this time, or you go Breaker rivalry with Ilya Dragunov, and you get to the Berlin thing that they want to do. I think both of those stories to be told have to have Braun Breaker in them, and they need Braun Breaker to take the Intercontinental Championship out of the equation. So for both of them to sort of gravitate away from Breaker to Gunther, whether it's Ilya Dragunov or whether it's Sami Zayn, don't do it title for title. Like Sami Zayn, Gunther, title for title in Berlin would be a cool story. I don't think it's the story people want to see right now. You could build it. It could be great. You could do a whole thing on the history of when Intercontinental Champions have gone for world titles. Ultimate Warrior and all that type of thing. Because people definitely want to see more footage of Hulk Hogan losing. Because how dare he have an unpopular opinion? Different story for a different day. But also just Braun Breaker, with the presentation that he's given, has to get the big win. He has to have the first concrete accomplishment to cap off the introduction that they've given him. Because the introduction they've given to him is great, but he needs a thing. Like, I did this thing, so everything you've been told is right about me because here's this thing. And on Raw, right now, that's the Intercontinental Championship. And on the other side of the coin, not going to be very popular to a lot of people because a lot of people can't stand the guy. On the other side of the coin, on SmackDown, as much as I would love to see LA Knight win that other title, I think Logan Paul's winning in his hometown. And it's not for the typical, hometown pop. It's like, he won in his hometown, and even his hometown doesn't like him because that's what a good heel he is. So I think, again, like I said at the beginning, if you want this show to not be stale and everything sort of seems samey, you look at your mid-card titles across both brands, and both of them sort of stayed where they were, even though there were cool stories involved. I think there's a lot you could do. The whole, I guess, storytelling square between Gunther, Sami Zayn, Braun Breaker, Ilya Dragunov, eventually, throw titles out the window for a second, eventually that's a four-way that I want to see. But right now, you've got two challengers that you can line up for Gunther after he picks up the belt, whether that's in Berlin or at SummerSlam, and for either one of those competitors to be the competitors, the Intercontinental Championship kind of has to be moved out of the way. Now, do we go back to, I know they're both heels, but do we go back to Chad Gable trying to get into that mix? Do we have a heels versus heels, who's the bigger asshole, Chad Gable versus Braun Breaker match? Absolutely. But this is the only one, really, where I'm saying there has to be this winner, or it's wrong. Braun Breaker has to win. He can do it through scheming means. He's an asshole. He can do it through cheap shots and cheating, and maybe he's got somebody in his corner. Maybe Sami Zayn's wife is there again, and he, starts fucking with her in the front row, and he gets distracted and gets cut in half with a spear, because the spear does kill. I would love to go with Edge or Goldberg to wind people up, or anything like that, but Braun Breaker's spear is terrifying. Side note, a little bit of a funny thing that I heard on an interview a while ago. They were interviewing Rhino, and Rhino tried to say, the gore is undefeated. Nobody's ever kicked out of the gore. If you saw somebody kick out, that wasn't a gore, it was a spear. I think that's fucking brilliant. I'm not gonna lie. I think that's absolutely fucking brilliant. Breaker has to win. Nia Jax can't win. There's my two big statements right out of the way. Cody Rhodes versus Solo Sikoa. Now, I said it at the beginning about the show. The show can't just be a show. This can't be just a match. It can't. Criticism levied heavily on Solo Sikoa right now, and I think it's kind of by design, which I think a lot of people are missing the point on. Solo Sikoa can't measure up to Roman Reigns, because right now Solo Sikoa is playing the character of a guy that can't measure up to Roman Reigns. It works. I know that doesn't work for everybody, but that definitely works for me. And the biggest way he can fight back, is his character can fight against that, is, well, I'm going to go beat the guy that just beat Roman. Doesn't that make me better than Roman? Am I desperate for your approval? Yes. Am I desperate for your acknowledgement? Yes. Solo Sikoa has been painted by a lot of people as this guy's just not it. Like, he's recruited a bunch of people into the new bloodline that we'd rather see in that match than him. Jacob Fatu is an example a lot of people are using. So for his sake, and for the match's sake, and for the sake of it just not feeling like, okay, Cody's going to go a bit Cena and this is who he's beating this month, it can't be just a match. Don't care who the winner is. I really, truly don't. Solo has to show out. Cody has to do whatever he needs to do to help him show out, which I'm sure he will. The match has to justify itself, and with all the expectation, there has to be some fuckery. Cody could win a good match, and it'd be fine. It'd be kind of predictable. The Bloodline could interfere. Cody could, batter back the backup and still win. That could be fine. That would be understandable, but it's something we could see at the end of SmackDown. We could have a mini version of what happened at WrestleMania, where he's fighting Solo, the Bloodline get involved, and all of a sudden Cody's got backup. Out come RKO, out come Kevin Owens, out come maybe Sami Zayn, because they're all in the same building at the same time, and, we throw everything we can at the Bloodline because they're evil, and Cody Rhodes still walks out the winner. Whoa! But all that is smoke and mirrors that kind of feels like it's covering up the fact that Cody Rhodes versus Solo was never the match. Now, if the match isn't there to be a match, the match has to do something else to justify its being there. Obviously, the something else is the return of either Roman or Roman and the Usos, or whatever combination of good guy bloodline is coming back. If that happens, then you justify the match being there, even if the match doesn't justify itself. Does that make sense? Whether it's Solo fucks his way to a win and has a stare down with Roman Reigns after the fact, whether it's Roman comes out during the match, causes a distraction, costs Solo the match, and then they have the stare down based on that, although that does make Cody look a bit weak. Whatever the case may be, as soon as Roman Reigns comes out there, the story isn't the match anymore, and then you, as a fan, or at least as a fan myself, you go into that, okay, this match isn't here to be a match, this match is here to be the platform for this. And then the this is always awesome. WWE is good at the this. WWE is good at the story. WWE is good at the, after the match is over, Sammy, here's the chair, you better hit your friend with it, and then the turn or whatever. It better be, they're good at the this with the, I'm going to do this because you can't, super kick to Roman. They're very good at the, you're out the bloodline, and so am I, super kick, all that kind of thing. We're good at the, let's tell the story, even if you're not a Cody guy, you're a Cody guy that one night at WrestleMania. They're very good at the this. And they're going to have to put in a lot of this if the match can't justify itself as being the match for match's sake. So, worst case scenario, I don't care what the result is, honestly, something has to happen in this match to make it more than Cody and Solo was just a match. There's fuckery. Solo steps up his game and gives us the match of his life. Cody steps up and helps Solo to the match of his life. The new bloodline comes in and fucks around. The old bloodline comes in and they have a, what do you call it? The West Side Story standoff that everybody hates at War Games. Something has to happen for this match to be more than just the match that it is right now when you look at the graphic. If this match is, and I say this in tight air quotes, just a match, that's the worst case scenario. Because even if the thing changes, even if there's story coming out afterwards, regardless of whether Cody wins or whether Solo wins, if this is just a match, it's a failure. Because this match existing as just a match doesn't work. And even I'll say that. I'm the guy that's super high on WWE right now. But if you tell me Solo leaves his guys in the back, Cody leaves his guys in the back, and we just have these guys out there having a match for match's sake, that's not main event of SummerSlam, folks. I am sorry. I should say, before I get on to my last point, I don't know what the worst case scenario is for Drew and Punk and Seth Rollins, because the big rumor is, with the return of Bad Blood, Drew McIntyre and CM Punk are going to have a Hell in a Cell match. Now, how do we get there? Does Punk come out feeling screwed? Does Drew come out feeling screwed? Does Seth Rollins fuck over both of them and refuse to count anybody, and the match ends in a draw? Does Seth Rollins get thrown into it and that Hell in the Cell match becomes a triple threat match? There's way too many ways that they can go with that match, and all of them are good for me to possibly speculate on a worst case scenario. And yes, am I biased because I really like the three guys involved? Am I biased because they've created a story where any direction they go is kind of good? Absolutely. I'll admit that. Am I leaving this match on the shelf because I do not know what the bad scenario is in that match? Yes. But I'm also combining two other matches for my last point. I'm combining the men's and women's World Heavyweight Championship matches to just say, as much as I like them, as much as they have been the highlight of Raw for a long time, the worst case scenario at SummerSlam is we don't get the split of the Judgment Day. It has to happen. It has to happen because we can already see it happening, and we're waiting for that point now. We're trying to avoid that point, I should say, where certain people watching are going to be like, okay, we can see it plain as day, let's do it, let's get it over with. And that is sort of the splintering of Dominic, Liv, JD, and Finn kind of going off in one direction, and your two brand new baby faces, Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley, going off in their own directions. Now, if you look at the two matches individually, kind of like Solo Sikoa, Damian Priest has been labeled as he's not really hitting his champion, which I don't necessarily agree with. He's carrying the belt that nobody cares about, but that's because they're determined not to care about it. Everything's up in the air with Damian Priest. And if he just goes into SummerSlam and gets smoked by Gunther, who was very recently a very good Intercontinental Champion, but that solidifies you as a mid-carder, so he has to do something to prove himself to be a main eventer. If you get beaten by somebody as dominant as they are, who's still seen by some people as a high operating mid-carder, it's going to basically solidify, everything we thought about Damian Priest was true. If he gets fucked over by his own goth jock little family, it's justified. It's the kind of fuckery in wrestling that somebody like a Gunther laughs at anyway, so he'll definitely take the win. He'll get that championship. You can go off into those Sammy and Breaker and Dragunov conversations that I talked about a second ago. He's going to have the title when we go to Berlin. Whether it happens at SummerSlam or whether it happens sometime between now and Berlin, he's going to get his hands on that championship. How do you do that without diminishing Damian Priest any more than some people already have? You have him get fucked over by his brothers and sisters, his brothers in the bloodline. The same thing goes for Rhea Ripley. Now, first of all, mentioning Rhea Ripley, I have to say, in WWE's favor, look at Ripley versus Liv, look at CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre. Probably the two hottest rivalries on Raw at the moment, and both of them have been fully held up since WrestleMania, with the arguably more popular person of the feud not able to wrestle. Rhea Ripley was out, CM Punk is out, and Liv Morgan, Rhea Ripley, and CM Punk, Drew McIntyre feel like the two hottest matches on this card. Now, Rhea Ripley could come, she could slot back in, she could have her title back, and it feels like, okay, I'm back. I just sort of slotted back into where I was. I'm the champion, mommy this, mommy that, Judgment Day, everybody rise, all that kind of thing. And you labeled Liv Morgan as a placeholder or a bookmark by doing that. So Rhea Ripley is no better than she was, other than missing a couple of months, and Liv Morgan gets that stigma that a lot of wrestlers get of, you wouldn't have held that belt at all if Rhea Ripley hadn't gotten hurt, which doesn't really help anybody. Rhea Ripley's a star. People want to get behind Ripley. They do. I mean, they already are. let's be like, take face and heel out of it. People are already behind Rhea Ripley, but they want to cheer her as the good guy. They want to cheer Damian Priest as the good guy. Damian Priest is already trying to be the good guy within the Judgment Day, but it really, especially with Damian, it's been happening for a while now. With Rhea, because she was off, the conversation was kind of put on hold, I guess you could say. But both of them are in the sense of, like, okay, here's a guy who's getting a bunch of dickhead wins with all his dickhead friends because the Judgment Day are a bunch of dickheads. But he's the guy that we want to see get a proper... It doesn't help that his title reign started with Drew getting fucked over by Punk and then getting help in all his victories, and Punk got involved again, and Punk got involved again, and all that kind of thing. So nothing really has made Damian Priest look like a strong champion, whereas the people that are following Damian Priest want to see him as a strong champion. We have to do at some point Damian Priest being pissed off at CM Punk because, you know, Punk came in and made it so that he couldn't say that he won it the right way. He did it all on his own because Punk got involved. Punk got involved at WrestleMania, which allowed him to cash in and all that type of stuff. And you can't do one and not the other, because if you turn on Priest and Rhea Ripley comes in and bitch slaps them all because they're all like, you know, I'm going to be careful with my words here, but they're all a bit subservient to Rhea Ripley, that's not really going to work, and it's just going to slowly fall apart on Raw. And if Rhea Ripley's just come back to the company and the guys fuck her over and not Damian Priest is still going to come back to the clubhouse and boot the shit out of all of them. So you have to turn on all of them. The way that I would do it is do the women's match first. I would have Rhea Ripley, Liv Morgan, face-to-face. At the last minute, Rhea Ripley says, okay, you know, this is bubbled over, roddy rah, this needs to be a hardcore match. And as they come face-to-face, Dominic steps out from behind her, steps behind Liv. Finn steps behind Dominic. JD steps behind Finn. Carlito, who shouldn't really be there anymore, kind of says, what the hell are you guys doing? They kick him in the nuts. They toss him in the trash. He's done. I don't know what they do with Carlito after that. But basically all they do is play mind games around the ring, supporting Liv Morgan. Rhea Ripley is not only physically distracted, maybe one of them actually grabs her. I know they don't do a whole lot of that in WWE with the men doing stuff to the women, but like they trip her up or something like that. But they basically, they're sharks roaming around the ring on the outside, and sooner or later, eventually, you have them holding Liv Morgan, still the champion, on their shoulders. This is the new Judgment Day. This is what they did to Edge when they nominated like Finn into the group. And you go from there, and then you go back to the clubhouse, and you see Damian Priest, like, what the fuck, da-da-da-da-da. He's checking on Ripley, like, I've been trying to get these guys to get their heads straight, and they just don't do it, and roddy rah, and he goes and he reads them the riot act, how could you do this? Liv Morgan is sitting with them in the clubhouse, they're all playing video games and eating chicken tendies and all that kind of thing, says, you know, I'm going to deal with you guys later. He leaves the clubhouse. Probably Finn Balor gets a glint in his eye and says, maybe we'll deal with you first. And then they come and fuck with him in the main event, or in the Raw main event. Probably not even the Raw main event because Punk and Drew is there. Somewhere on the card, he has his match with Gunther. He's distracted anyway because his family, I'm using that loosely, is falling apart. Gunther sees it. Gunther takes advantage of it. Gunther doesn't even really need the help, but it's just an added, twist of the knife that they all come down. Liv Morgan with her title, the tag champions with their titles, and all that kind of thing. Probably Dominic still with his chicken nuggets. It's fine. And they cost Drew as well. It ends with a numbers game where Rhea Ripley's already hurt, so when she comes out and help Damian, she's not really able to. And as far as the guys on Damian, like, yeah, he's the big dominant former champion, but there's still 3 of them, and Carlito maybe comes out on the other side, and then you get like a mixed gender 6-person tag somewhere along the line. I could see it playing out in my head. Remember when DX did the turn and then the double turn? China came back to Triple H, but then China and Triple H turned on DX. Something very much like that could play out. Now, the other option is Rhea Ripley comes back from injury, tries to get her belt back, and loses and looks like a loser. And Damian Priest really wants to do it on his own and defends his title and loses and looks like a loser. And the fans that have been watching this happen, that know it's about to happen, that are getting to that, okay, get to the point, start falling off of it. So, do it all. Keep Priest strong, keep Rhea strong. Let the fans know these are finally baby faces you can cheer for properly. Let the new third generation Judgment Day rise as these absolute fucking dickheads. They were goths, and then they were kind of like jock assholes and whatever. Now they're just assholes, and they're run by Liv Morgan, and they're all simping for Liv Morgan. They're being led by Dominic Mysterio. Why the hell not? There's so much to play with once you flip the switch of, no, this is the new Judgment Day. Judgment Day doesn't split at SummerSlam. WWE got some splaining to do. If Solo and Cody is just a match, WWE got some splaining to do. If Braun Breaker, one of the most successful NXT call-ups of the recent era, again fails to get the Intercontinental Championship and all those stories kind of stay in reserve, WWE got some splaining to do. If Nia Jax, because it makes no sense whatsoever, leaves with the WWE Women's Championship, WWE got some splaining to do. If we come out of this and WWE got some splaining to do, because we don't have any headlines, any progression, any big huge pops, any debuts, like have Jordynne Grace come out and beat the shit out of Liv Morgan after the match because she sees something bad happening to Rhea Ripley. They can build a respect, then they can break up, then they can have a match at like next year's WrestleMania or something like that. But if nothing newsworthy comes out of this show whatsoever, WWE got some splaining to do. And guess what? Because I think it's already happening, there's not a single tag team match or a single tag team championship represented on this show. So WWE already got some splaining to do. Anyways, put it down in the box below or follow me on X at Spaz Phoenix. Tell me what your SummerSlam worst case scenarios are. I would love to hear it. Do you guys like this? I did it once for WrestleMania. I thought I would do it again for this card here because it looks relatively good. So what's the worst thing that could possibly happen? Should I do more of these? Do you guys like these? Let me know. Feedback is always appreciated, etc. I've been Spaz, your YWC Reality Check. Subscribe up there, talk down there, start a conversation. Keep all these conversations going. Don't be a stranger. I will talk to each and every last one of you later, but for right now, I am tagging out.